As someone who wasn't a stranger to depression and anxiety growing up, a lot of my healing journey was essentially a pursuit to find happiness. But what even is happiness? I'm sure the poets and philosophers throughout history can give us variations of the same answer. And while I spent a lot of my life struggling to analyze those interpretations and scrutinize the feeling of happiness under a microscope, I eventually realized that it's quite simple. It's simply an emotion. When I was younger, my dad frequently told me to just be happy. I hated hearing that because it felt like I was almost erasing everything I was dealing with, as if to acknowledge what I was going through, I was only allowed to ever feel negative emotions. And while I do still feel like there is a dismissive aspect to the just be happy, it's not entirely wrong. Once I truly started paying attention to what was around me and acknowledging the simplest of pleasures in life, I was able to reset my bar for gratitude, which brought about happy feelings. I think that sometimes we conflate happiness with that euphoric feeling that we sometimes experience while on vacation, laughing with friends, or achieving something. For me personally, I think it was because sadness was something I felt so deeply, so I assumed its opposite had to be equally as intense in the opposite direction. But that's not all there is to happiness. Sometimes happiness is just being in a state of peace, because being at peace is nice, and when I feel good, I am happy. It can be something impromptu, like deciding to go for a short walk outside, or routine, like taking the time to make my matcha before the workday. Happiness is fleeting, which can feel defeating, but it's also a really beautiful thing. We would not value happiness to the same extent if we only ever experienced it. For example, a person who can buy a loaf of bread whenever they like most likely won't have the same gratitude for that ability to do so as someone who is maybe struggling to afford food. Acknowledging the things that we have in our lives, even if we have them consistently throughout our lives, gives us the awareness of how wonderful our lives actually are. We take so much for granted, and we should feel deserving of those things that we do have, but we should also ground ourselves in the reality that we are experiencing. There's always more to achieve and more to dream, but we cannot get too lost beyond the present, and that's because happiness lives in the present. We cannot wait to be happy, nor should we decide if we are allowed to be happy based on our past. Like I said earlier, happiness is an emotion. There are things we can imagine in the future that we think will make us happy, but we really don't know the full truth of that. I often tend to forget about the mundane, sometimes not exciting parts of our lives. I forget that everyone, no matter how successful I think they might be, has their own set of problems and things that they are working through. And in the past, we sometimes look back with rose-colored glasses. It is so easy to be nostalgic for the good parts of the past and only compare those moments to our current situation. Also, as I'm overcoming certain situations, I think of them differently. After the fact, I have proof and can trust it was possible to get through, while before the fact, I probably thought it was impossible. A lot of times we might put our happiness into external things: food, trips, experiences, people, vices, and maybe careers, just to name a few. I recently heard the saying, "We all have a bunch of problems until we have a health issue, then we have one." We put so much of our value into things we cannot control or guarantee will always be around. We forget that who we are stripped down from all of those things is still worthy and capable of experiencing happiness. We truly are our only strongest companion in life. And that is not to say that we should not value external things at all, just that we need to be able to source happiness from within. Happiness and being in a state of peace don't eliminate or minimize the feeling of sadness. Happiness only exists because sadness exists. We know how good happiness feels because we have also felt sadness. Feeling a negative emotion isn't a bad thing unless we're keeping it around for too long. Every experience we have in life will evoke a certain emotion for a duration of time, but we need to know when it is time to feel the feeling and when we should start taking the steps to move on. Kind of like a balanced system between releasing control and also not letting yourself be controlled. All in all, the art of happiness is to just feel it and trust that it will come around, because you can decide whether or not you allow it into the present moment. Happiness can be a multitude of different things and come from many different areas of life. I truly believe that there is no keeper of the gates to the feeling of happiness, and it's something that we will always have access to because it's abundant. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this little video essay. A little bit different, but I wanted to start incorporating some of my writing into my visuals on YouTube because I really feel like I've been curating my footage a lot recently, and I want to start curating what I speak about as well, because there's a lot of topics in my mind and I would love to kind of open up discussions about all of them. So I want to start incorporating more of these topics into my regular videos. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you very soon.